let's talk about William Tyndale. William Tyndale lived from the years 1494 to 1536. He was contemporary with the great Protestant reformer Martin Luther. Around the same time that Martin Luther was working on his Bible translation in German, William Tyndale, another giant of the faith, was at work on a translation of the Bible into English. William Tyndale was saved through reading the New Testament of Erasmus, and as a result of his salvation, he left the Roman Catholic Church. He was greatly influenced by the literature and the gospel tracts that were written by Martin Luther. Tyndale became another greatly respected Bible scholar and Protestant leader that many looked up to. One day, a friend invited William Tyndale over to his home for a meal to debate with a Catholic bishop. It was a very heated debate, and William Tyndale's arguments were so articulate and grounded in the Bible that he made the bishop look foolish. Frustrated with his inability to refute William Tyndale, the bishop declared with anger, quote, "The people would be better with the teachings of the Pope in Rome instead of the Bible," end of quote. William Tyndale's reply has become legendary by now. He said this in response, quote, "I defy the Pope and all of his laws. If God be my helper, ere many years, I shall cause the boy that driveth the plow to know more of the scriptures than thou knowest," end of quote. William Tyndale was one of Europe's greatest Bible scholars of all times. He was educated at two of Europe's top universities, Oxford and Cambridge. He was a brilliant linguist. He spoke 8 languages, and some say that he spoke them as fluently as his mother tongue. The languages he spoke were Latin, Greek, Hebrew, German, French, Italian, Spanish, and English. Tyndale's linguistic ability would be on display anytime that he would preach to a congregation, because he would read from the pulpit Erasmus's Greek and Latin New Testament, and then on the spot would verbally translate it from Greek and Latin into English and expound upon the Word of God into English before his English-speaking audience. And so, as manifested in that famous argument that he had with the Catholic bishop, Tyndale had a burden in his heart for the common man, the plowboy. He had a desire for the common man on the street to be able to know and understand the scriptures. So for 11 years, Tyndale worked on translating the Word of God into English. During those 11 years, he lived life on the run as a fugitive, as the Roman Catholic Church would send bounty hunters to capture and arrest him for the crime of translating the Bible without their permission. The Lollards, those that were followers of Wycliffe, they were known as the Lollards, and the Lollards, they helped Tyndale to go to Germany, where he met with Martin Luther. Tyndale asked for Luther to help in translating the Word of God, and Tyndale's translation was based upon Erasmus's text in Latin and Greek, and was also collated with Martin Luther's German Bible. That's how Martin Luther helped Tyndale with. He helped him with his German translation so that he could have another translation of the Bible to compare with. Well, William Tyndale's New Testament was finished in the year 1524. In 1526, Luther took Tyndale to the print shop of a fellow named Peter Schoeffer, who was the son of Johannes Gutenberg's partner, who helped Gutenberg to print the first Bible in Latin, which was the first Bible that was ever printed on the printing press. So there, the first 3,000 copies of William Tyndale's New Testament were printed. While Tyndale remained hidden in Germany, the Lollards smuggled Tyndale's Bible into England in sacks of flour and barrels of grain. Outside of the KJV translators themselves, there's perhaps no other man that was more influential upon the English of the King James Version than William Tyndale. Some scholars estimate that up to 80% of the wording in the King James Version was influenced by the work of William Tyndale. William Tyndale invented many words that we use today in the English language, words that were not only used in the Bible, but eventually found their way into the English dictionary. For example, the word Passover was a word that was made by William Tyndale. Unfortunately, William Tyndale was eventually captured by the Roman Catholic Church and thrown in jail. The prison where Tyndale stayed was extremely unsanitary and infested with rats and roaches and lice. The floor was muddy with flea-infested straw upon which he would sleep on. He had no chair, no bed, no blankets in his cell, and under these conditions, William Tyndale's health suffered greatly. Yet under these unsanitary conditions, while very weak and very ill, William Tyndale continued working on his Bible translation. His Old Testament was not yet complete when he was in prison. Unfortunately, he was never able to finish his Old Testament because the Roman Catholic Church, they eventually decided to execute Tyndale. So in 1536, they tied him to a stake and strangled him to death and then burned his body in the fire. William Tyndale's final words were, quote, "Lord, open the eyes of the king," end of quote. The Roman Catholic Church worked so hard to confiscate Tyndale's Bibles and to destroy them. His Bible and all of his literature was outlawed, and anyone found in possession of them were brutally punished, sometimes unto death. Thanks, however, to the courageous efforts of the Lollards, the followers of John Wycliffe, some of his work survived, as Tyndale's literature and his Bibles were continually smuggled throughout Europe. Tyndale never expected his work to be the final product. In fact, in regard to his Old Testament, he only went so far as completing the first 5 books of Moses and the book of Jonah. Some believe that he probably finished the books of Joshua all the way to 2 Chronicles. In the preface of his 1526 New Testament, he wrote these words, quote, "Count it as a thing not having its full shape, but as it were born afore his time, even as a thing begun rather than finished. In time to come, if God have appointed us thereunto, we will give it its full shape." End of quote. So in other words, William Tyndale did not view his work as the finished product. He desired for other people to come after him and to pick up where he left off and to purify, to produce a completed, pure copy of the Word of God in English. He was not allowed, due to his premature death, he was not allowed to finish his work of translating the Bible into English. But what William Tyndale did was he provided a work that the King James translators were able to use in finishing their work to produce what is now our King James version of the Bible. The King James translators leaned heavily upon the work of William Tyndale. So God answered his prayer when he said that prayer, his final words. God opened the eyes of the king. Well, it was King James of England who got his eyes open to the truth, and God worked in his heart in such a way that he allowed for the collection of Europe's greatest scholars, the greatest collection of Bible scholars and linguists of all times, for the purpose of putting together a Bible in English that later became known as the King James Bible, those translators leaned heavily upon the work of William Tyndale and his courageous efforts. And so for that reason, we honor the memory of great, courageous men of God like William Tyndale. Thank God for him. May God bless his memory, and may God bless you, is our prayer.